those at home. My name is John Weiss. I'm the chair of the board.
Kathleen Pearson.
John O'Connell.
Martha Taylor, Town Planner.
And George Morris, Associate Member.
Okay. So,
We actually can't take any motion on the minutes right now because we don't have a quorum of the board members who were actually there.
that we're
To
here,
vote on.
right? Because, all right, so we'll wait for
So
David
we
then.
need David for that.
And on the appearances, Mark Simmons is not here, but are we going to schedule that for next time?
He will let me know, tentatively January 8th. He wanted to consult with an attorney.
Tentatively
and so-
for our meeting
for our-
on the 8th?
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
and just to let our TV viewers know, our January meetings will be on the 8th and the 22nd
Oh,
instead of
thank
the
you.
1st and the 15th.
And 22nd, okay. All right, so now on to some old business. 101 Newbury Turnpike, which we have been following for quite some time. John or Martha?
You want
Good.
okay.
Well, we'll tag team.
Okay.
Yeah, Al, Doug had written a letter that I think
Right.
everybody saw, and it got screwed up in transmission somehow. Anyway, it finally got into the guy's hands. Doug followed up, and it turns out that Alan was given the letter as soon as Angelo got it, Alan the engineer. And he was in the process of responding. Well, he responded by Tuesday. There was nobody there, but he gave us a letter that was, it was a pretty wimpy letter. It really said as little as possible. So Doug got on the phone with him this morning. I was there, and he basically demanded that he get in here on Monday and, show an excuse from his undertaker if he wasn't here.
Yeah.
Is that
And-
for the engineer to come in or for
no,
Angelo?
everybody, engineer and. So what we, hopefully we have is a meeting set up sometime on Monday with Martha, myself, Doug, and Angelo, and the engineer.
And for those who are not aware, this is a project on 101 Newburyport Turnpike that the board approved a year ago. The board and the Conservation Commission expected a considerable amount of work to be done by this time, and it hasn't been done. And so the Conservation Commission has been after the owner and developer. Is he the owner?
He's a lessee.
He's the lessee, and to move forward with the project. And so that's what this discussion is all about, so.
Right, and I do have a copy of the letter from Alan Roscoe, which I'll scan and send to everybody
Okay.
if you want to see it.
Yep.
But it addresses the lack of erosion controls, the storage area at the rear of the site, the wrap, the scrap lumber that's on the site, and gives a timetable. But as John said, it's doesn't really cover all the issues.
Basically, the Concom considered it to be an unsatisfactory answer. So that's why,
Okay.
hence the meeting Monday.
Right,
Hopefully.
okay. All right. On the stormwater rules and regs and the subdivision rules and regs, we have been, again, tracking this the last couple of weeks. We want to bring these forward for approval in the spring. John, do you want to indicate
Well,
where?
subdivision, I don't know what are we waiting on for this, I'm sorry, for the stormwater? I don't think there's anything more for us to discuss. I'd like to see that draft, whether
I
it's
would
totally
concur.
complete or not, go out to Joe.
That has not gone out to Joe
It hasn't
yet?
gone out to Joe because I was waiting to talk to Ginny about the the sequencing of the change to the
Yeah.
bylaw and the regulations. I had a brief conversation with her about it, and basically, because the bylaw still has the planning board as the granting authority, the board can't adopt, or whoever does it, regulations can't be adopted that are in conflict with that,
With,
with the bylaw.
right. I
So,
don't think this is in conflict with the bylaw, is
well,
it?
the
Oh, yeah,
bylaw
it
states that the
says the
planning
planning
board,
board
right,
is the-
right. So basically, they need to kind of sequence hand in hand.
Okay,
So I can send it out to Joe with a note saying that the permit granting authority is changing.
Is still, yeah, and that is to be
Is
resolved.
to be resolved,
I
but the
would,
rest
I
of it,
would
yeah.
do that and get it out to Joe.
Yeah, because I
quickly.
want him to do the subdivision
Right,
too,
right,
and I
right,
don't
right.
want him to do everything at once.
Right, right, right.
It's not fair to him. The other thing that's flapping in the breeze is the fees or lack of fees. That has not been resolved. I haven't talked to Tracy since that time you and I and Joe were talking.
Right.
And with Tracy on the subject.
Right,
a
and
couple
Fees in
of weeks
regards to
back.
what?
The stormwater.
Fees. We have not worked out a way to finance that other than the appropriations that we have now. And that's working okay. If TMDLs kick in and we have to do some serious retrofits, then we're gonna need some source of funding. And it seemed appropriate there are problems with creating it as a fee, because fees and taxes are, it's an iffy situation.
So, John, could you explain for me and the audience what it is? This is a project that would be privately done, that would need, that we don't really know how to pay for, or is it
I'm sorry.
public?
What, well, there's a lot of things that have to happen. There's basically a $5,000 a year budget that has been repeated so far, and I got every reason to
For
expect
the,
that will
for the
continue.
stormwater?
Yeah, and that will pay for the testing equipment and the reagents, okay?
Okay.
Now, if it has to go beyond that, right now, there's a draft total maximum daily load set of rules for the Parker River that's out there.
Right.
And who knows when that will be adopted. If it is adopted, we have to take very seriously we have to do some action to cut back whatever the load is. And that involves retrofits, and I don't know what they will be at this point. And, I'd rather not go public with what the possibilities would be for a host of reasons, but it's something that could require some serious funding.
Okay.
Something beyond $5
No, I
million a
understand.
year.
Now I understand.
You know.
Okay.
And who does it, that remains to be seen. Obviously, you do whatever you can with town forces because it's cheaper, but there's a limit to how much, how far we can spread Tim out. But that's, right now, we don't know. And it would really be nice if EPA would come out with
Right.
their draft, but
But you're talking in regards to the collection systems and the discharging into different receiving waters versus
Right.
trying to, the source of a pollutant, like
well,
such as.
have to find the source and do something
Right,
about it.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any questions from other members on this issue? But I think the major issue here is that you will send it to Joe for
Yeah,
his
I'll
comments.
send it out to Joe.
And you'll have a conversation with town council about making these, seeing how parallel these items have to move in tandem, just to make sure that we do it correctly. Okay? And then on the subdivision rules and regs, I got what was sent out, and I must admit, I had a very difficult time trying to read them online, so I asked Martha to print out so we can do them. Because, John, all of your work that basically took the existing document and showed where you made the changes.
I took it was far easier to do that
I
than
got
to
that.
take the new one
And I got it. It's just that
so-
I didn't, it took a while, and then to go back and forth between the two
Yeah,
documents
it's
was
time
difficult.
consuming. I know.
So I
spent
asked
several hours doing that
Martha
myself.
to make copies of these, and I guess to ask all of us to review them and have our comments ready by the next meeting. Unless-
Well,
I'd appreciate the extra time.
Yeah,
that would be fine. I thought that what I was asked to do was come up with a description, at least briefly, of what's changed. And I can do that or not do that, it doesn't matter. If you want to put
oh,
it on.
you mean today, right now?
Well, that's what, I don't know, I thought it was for last meeting, but it never got out to, I never got it done in time. I don't particularly want to do it tonight, but
No,
I'll do it whenever we want to do it.
I'm happy with, and we have not been at this for at least a year, as far
We
as I can
couldn't
tell.
discuss it tonight.
No.
We can't.
So here's what I think.
Do it for homework and we talk
That's-
next
that-
meeting.
We're all charged with reading these documents. I mean, John has made it easy for us because he has outlined, you don't have to read the whole thing. There's arrows where he wants us, where he has made changes. Let's just look at those areas and make sure that this is all stuff that we have been part of, but it's just that it's over a year, so let's go back and take a look
There's a
at it.
couple of caveats. There were a couple of places that we made changes that I missed as I went through, and I'll take care of that when we talk. They're fairly minor. And the one on the very first page was my example to Gail, and somehow that ended up as
I was
an
wondering
arrow.
about that,
There's
because I
nothing-
read them
That's
word
a-
by
Yeah,
word,
there's
and there was
nothing,
no change.
nothing's changed, so I want to save you from doing what poor Martha had to do, try to figure out what the difference was.
So, these are the copies. Who else would like printed
For that one, thank you.
Bring a copy for Linda tomorrow.
So I have here,
One should say subdivision of land, chapter 117, and the other one says draft 112513 at the top.
It looks like you got
So
two.
this is
No?
the one.
so this has the arrows, but this is the draft, so that's
Right.
why I'm
Right.
confused.
This, just to show you what,
Red, yours isn't.
so you go through this, and these arrows will show you where John has made changes in this.
So,
So-
okay, in this one,
So this guides you so that you don't have to read the entire document.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, just for a drill, I suggested changes. The board pretty much adopted the changes that are in here over the last year or so.
Right.
They're not anything I dreamed up over the
No,
last few
I
weeks.
agree, John. It
As
just-
I go through it, and I'm sure I'll be doing this even after we adopt it, I'm finding odds and ends of things that I don't really like, and I want to talk to the board about.
Okay. And noticing that the stormwater regs are not in the subdivision regs.
Right.
Maybe we can have a discussion about that, in that now it's my understanding that they will be referenced.
Yeah, they are
And simply
referenced.
said, for information about the town's stormwater regulations, see bylaw XYZ. Is that what it will say?
Well, basically what we said was, because I was hoping to use this for site plan review as well as for subdivisions. This
Right.
will reference that document in terms of the submission requirements, which is where it resides. And there are certain things in subdivisions that are not germane to stormwater in general.
Right.
And they are there in the subdivision rules and regs.
Right.
For everything else you need to have on a plan, you're referred to the stormwater.
stormwater
Yeah.
regs.
Because we have similar requirements for drawings for the OSRD. It's less involved, but maybe we want to reference that in our OSRD rules and regs at some time in the future. Maybe not.
Maybe. David, do you have a thought on that at all?
Well, if there are substantive changes to the way in which the stormwater regulations interact with the others, namely the subdivision and the OSRD, then yes, I mean, we should.
I think so.
Because right now, it seems to me the OSRD stormwater requirements are pretty cursory. They're not in any sense.
They aren't a big deal because they're not required to go into
Right.
a lot of detail. But somehow or other, I think we should try to prevent what happened on the Martin Burns project, where they had a massive amount of concrete curbs and gutters and catch basins, et cetera, which is the last thing we want.
Right.
We do, and they don't want it either. It's cheaper to do it with country drainage.
Right.
Right. And for those, OSRD stands for Open Space Residential District. It's in fact under which Caldwell Farm was developed, and the project on Rolfs Lane is being developed right now under the Open Space Residential District, where a certain amount of open space is put out and put in perpetuity, and higher density is given to the developer. So that's what we're talking about.
I frankly haven't even looked at how we would put that in there, so it may not be appropriate to reference that at all.
Yeah.
the rest, you see, your skepticism, Dave, I tend to agree with it. I think we should have a look and see if we want to or not.
Right.
Okay,
I just want to keep that one open, that's all.
all right. Anything further from anyone on stormwater or subdivision regs? Okay. Anybody in the audience want to address that issue? No? Caldwell Farm Trail, about 2 weeks ago or so, or 10 days, I wrote a letter to Jerry Ring that was based on discussions I had had with our town council and tried to answer the request that Jerry and other members of the HOA, or the, I guess it's not an HOA, it's a, there you go.
And here's Ginny's.
Right, so that's for you. Does any in the audience want to see this? I thought you would. Here, I'll give you 2 copies, okay?
Do you need the one with the note on it, Martha? There's a note on this side.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Here, this is
Oh,
Ginny's,
okay,
that's
yes.
Ginny's. And so just as just if I can summarize the letter and my discussions with town council about this, in setting the context, the Caldwell Farm Association had asked that we rescind the trail easement that had been recorded as part of the deeds for the Caldwell Farm project in 2004 and 2005. And so we met with council and said, well, if we were to do something like that, what would have to happen in order for us to do that? And so after considerable deliberation and discussions, Ginny Kremer, who's our town council, got back to us and said, and I'll just do this quickly, that first of all, there must be a vote of the majority of the Board of Selectmen that the land is no longer needed for the specified purpose, that is, a trail easement. Second, there must be a vote at Newbury's town meeting by a 2/3 margin authorizing the transfer of the town's interest in the land. Only then could the Board of Selectmen divest the town of the easement. However, since the land on which the town has an easement is also burdened by a conservation restriction conveyed to the town in 2005, even if the above votes and actions took place, the inhabitants of the town would still have an interest in the land and a right to construct a walking trail. The CR was conservation restriction was granted under provisions of Massachusetts law and approved by the Massachusetts Secretary of Environmental Affairs, and so as such, the conservation restriction cannot be assigned or disposed of except in compliance with Article 97 of the Massachusetts State Constitution, which would require a 2/3 affirmative vote of both houses of the Massachusetts legislature. So I'm not going to go on and read the rest of it. You can, in the audience, you can take a look at it, but there are other concerns about a no-loss policy in terms of the value of the property that the town would be losing. And so the ability to do this is, it puts the town in a highly restrictive perspective, even if the town wanted to do it. So this was sent to Jerry Ring on December 9th. On Monday of this week, I did get a note back from Jerry saying at the end of this, I said, to assist you in your discussions with homeowners, I'd be glad to attend a meeting of the Homeowners Association should you think that would be helpful. And Jerry has gotten back to me and he's asked me to come to a meeting in early January of, I think, the board. And so I'm willing to do that. My thought is, based on this and the way I've presented it here, that perhaps Martha should come with me, and that we should keep it at that level. I don't think that we should bring Ginny at this point in time, because I don't think, as far as I know, that it's meant to be
So formal?
yeah, that I think it's wanted to be an informal kind of discussion, And so that's my instinct on this, so I open it up to the board for comments or anything else that you.
I agree in keeping Ginny at home. That's never a good thing
Right.
until you have to, and then it's a very good thing. But
Yes.
until you really have to have an attorney, they will just make problems for you.
Right.
Nice as she is an attorney and can't help
Did,
herself. Did I say that? Sorry, George.
Sorry, George. Sorry, George.
did Jerry Ring indicate what beyond your presence was in their mind?
No. And I haven't forwarded that to anyone because it was just a very cryptic note.
Uh-huh,
You know, I have your letter,
right.
to help us make a decision about what's an appropriate thing to do. We'd like to take you up on you being here. And we're looking for some time in January.
I'm just wondering whether that shouldn't in fact be a public meeting.
There's no negotiation going on at that time, correct? It's just information. You're just relaying the
Well,
information from the attorney.
Yeah, I think, I mean, the way I gathered this, that this was a, you know, and what I had talked over with the attorney was, well, I could go out there and have a discussion, you know, with folks just to further, you know, discuss what this letter is all about, if there's some questions about it. And it was not thought that at that time that would be a public meeting, that would be, you know, me going to a meeting of the condominium association.
I can't see how that would require being a public meeting. There's two town officials involved, John and Martha. The gang from Caldwell Farm are not town officials. Nothing they're gonna say, think, or do has an impact on the taxpayers directly. I mean, it's not like somebody elected them from the town. They're
No,
elected,
no, I'm
you know.
not thinking about it from that point of view. I'm thinking about it from the point of view of we still do not know whether the homeowners association board actually represents the opinion of the community.
And in the letter, and we will discuss this. At the end of the letter, I say that if, after thinking through all of these requirements, you wish to proceed, the town would require a signed request indicating that a majority, or whatever percentage controls for a vote of this nature, of the individual homeowners support this action and will agree to pay any costs incurred by the town. So, I mean, it's, and that's what we're obliged to do. So that's what I will have a discussion with whoever's going to be at this meeting. Yeah, now, let me just, before you, I just want to make sure that the board members have an opportunity to discuss this through.
Did anything come about the selectmen's meeting? I wasn't caught up. Didn't someone from Caldwell Farm approach the selectmen at one of the meetings?
Not at any of the meetings.
No.
No, I have had discussions with the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and he's aware of all of this.
No, but okay, I thought I saw something, but I'm mistaken.
Given that they approached us first, is there any need for the board by vote to take a position on this themselves as a planning board, or should we just be traffic cops and help them through the process without taking a position at this time?
Well, I
If
didn't
it's
think we
going
were
to the-
navigating.
When you say that, you mean, for example, the town of Newbury has not taken a position about whether we want the trail or not.
Right, because we can't, it's
Do
selectmen,
you see where we
town
are?
meeting and so
You know,
forth.
we're right now, we are the
Yeah.
traffic cops on this issue.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we are.
Yeah, I think I've already talked myself out of my question.
Oh, okay.
Not a good
Yeah,
idea.
the one thing I think that, to me, is missing from the letter, and that maybe was missing in the conversation that you had with town council, is it would seem to me this has to be referred to the selectmen by this board. it cannot go to the selectmen any other way, because
Right.
this board was the board which, in fact, was given the responsibility of, in fact, supervising what happens with the trail, what happens with the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I think,
And that's not apparent here.
But that,
Right.
wasn't that in Ginny's letter?
No, it's, well, it starts off by saying
Yeah,
that
if you
the
look at-
process is
If
the-
you look at it, number 5 on the second page, the back of the first page, number 5, it says that it would have to come to the planning board.
Number 5 of what?
Oh, of this? Do you have this?
Oh, I don't, I just have a letter.
Could you send this down?
Did it not make it that far?
Yeah.
That's it.
yeah, the,
Oh, okay, thank you.
yeah, the, why don't you take a look at that, David, before we,
Did I make a copy of yours, Martha?
Here, no, this
Number
is an extra.
I don't see a number
Thank you.
5.
Kathleen?
No. Oh, there, okay.
Did you call me?
Yeah, no, you, I
yeah,
thought you were
because
running
we
out to
would,
make
we
it.
would
Right,
need,
right.
we would need to do.
Yes, I'm gonna say that, all I'm getting at is that in the second paragraph here, now did what I have in my hand, which is the memo, did that go with the letter?
No.
Okay. In the second paragraph, it says, there must be a vote by a majority of the Board of Selectmen, the land is no longer let up. My point being that before anything can happen, we have to act.
That's right.
And they need to understand that, it seems to
Right.
me.
So,
Is
That's
that
why-
required, though? I guess,
Yes,
is it required that we refer it to them? That
yes.
well, you know, I will rely on town councils. I know we have to do it, I'm not sure when.
Well,
And,
you can't, no, I'm sorry, I am sure when, okay? And that is, it would have to be a situation in which we agree to modify the special permit
Oh.
in a way,
oh,
But that's
Okay.
the
Oh, oh,
final
oh.
stage.
that,
That's later.
that would be only after the town
yes. but-
voted to do that thing.
Yes, but.
And so
we-
she's, that is covered
Right.
here.
Okay, okay.
Let me just see.
What I'm saying,
it's all right
though,
there.
is
Yeah.
prior
No,
to
but in the
that,
letter, though.
prior to that, we have to decide that we are willing to go in that direction.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
We haven't
That's not-
taken, we haven't discussed whether we would or not as a board.
No, I know.
Yeah, we have. I haven't.
No, so what I'm saying is, all I'm saying is that is not in here as a step. Okay, look, what I'm getting at is we do not want to give any indication, however well-intentioned but wrong, that they need to go to the selectmen, which is what they've tried
No,
to do.
no, don't, that's not a problem. That's why they're having me come out there. I mean, I just.
Well, okay, but, you know, that's.
I understand what you're saying, both of you are
Right,
saying.
Right, and,
I'm not trying to pick holes in this. I am very concerned about this simply because what's happened now is a number of people have gotten involved with this who were not involved with it from pretty well day one. And I was.
I guess the question is they've made a request whether or not we could rescind the whole trail. And John looked into it to see whether or not legally it could. So he came back and said, you know, if we were to go in that direction, these are the steps that we'd have to go through.
And
But
the-
it was never said that, okay, go ahead, this is what we're gonna go forward and do, though. Am I correct?
Yeah, so for example, I mean, my last statement here is, if you are thinking of these requirements and wish to proceed, the town would require the sign, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
We can then begin to explore where the various bodies of the town stand on your request.
Right.
And to, so I mean, that's where we are. And then, and we would be one of those bodies.
Okay. All right.
So I guess with that in mind, would you like to say something?
Should I stand or come to the
I think you need
to go to one of the microphones.
to go to the microphones, or you can just have
Or
mine.
sit at the table and
Sit
we
at the
can turn
table,
one
bring,
around.
bring a chair up, and you can take my microphone.
Don't give her mine.
You have to.
I guess there's a special way to.
Oh, yeah, they are intertwined. And state your name and address.
My name is Carla Moss, and I'm from 118 Caldwell Farm Road. And I don't have concerns about the trail or anything that the planning committee is doing. I have real concerns about how Jerry and some of the board have been handling this, and it's gotten a lot worse since the last time I was here. I've given David some information, and I don't know, have you had a chance to share anything yet, or should I delve in?
Only in broad
Oh, okay.
terms, yeah.
After the last meeting, there was a board meeting the next morning. And traditionally, we have something called resident open forum, where you are allowed to go and ask questions, which I've done in the past. So I went, because I had seen another email from Jerry to somebody else stating that the whole thing that happened at the meeting he came to a couple meetings back
Right.
was part of a large strategy, an overall strategy. And this person had indicated in the email that he thought the trail was authorized, and if the town wanted to go ahead with it, you know, there really wasn't any reason to start fighting this. And the last comment by Jerry was something about, and legal action is still, you know, he didn't say he was going to take legal action, but it was still a possibility or something. So I'm concerned now, just what is he up to? So I go to the meeting. I was there on time. I was the only resident that was there to ask a question. So it wasn't as if he had 20 people in there all piling in on his meeting. And he said, well, what are you here for? And he said, we're not going to discuss the trail. And I said, well, I have a few questions, and I'm a little concerned about your strategy. And he goes, I don't have to talk to you about the trail. He said, I can do, and I'm just paraphrasing, I can do whatever I want with the trail because I have the support of the board. And I look over, and then two of them, one that are always like, there's three together in this group that are kind of all alike. And one of them looks at me and says, if you want to have anything to do with this trail, you have to get yourself elected to the board. And I'm like, and I said, well, Jerry, I know you have a lot of power. I'm trying to, you know, like, take my place, the bottom of the ladder. He goes, it's not power. I have responsibility. So now I said, I go home and I'm like, well, I better get a hold of this master deed and these bylaws before I get run out of the complex. And I look, and there it says it's powers. So I'm like, why were we having this argument? And the other thing is, what Jerry has clearly asked to have the trail easement removed from the master deed. In my mind, that is an amendment to our master deed that requires a 67% vote of approval from the unit owners and a 51% approval vote from the mortgage holders. And he is now, forget even asking anybody. You know, he sends out what he's going to do and doesn't ask for any comments. And the fact that he only gets 4 criticisms back, he immediately assumes everybody wants to do what he does. And now he's not even going to tell us what he's doing. And I mean, that was when he was going to try and bypass the planning board here and go to the selectmen, and that didn't work, I guess. But it's like, what is he up to? And you know, there's a whole thing on open space management. I don't think, as approved by the planning board, and it gives the planning board the right, access, to come on and inspect our property.
Right.
I don't think he's understood, and I don't think he understands that the access easement says that if he starts creating all these legal problems, we're gonna pay for it. And I'm like, I think all I would ask is anything that you involve him with, you insist that it be open to the rest of Caldwell. Because the other day, I mean, the gym is where they have their meetings. I walk in, and they're having meetings they haven't told us about. And I just, happened to walk in. And, I mean, you could go through a whole thing with him and then find out, once these other 65 unit owners start understanding all the documents, that they might not agree with him. I mean, I don't know whether he's read them. And he won't tell us what he's doing now.
It's interesting.
It makes it interesting where if it was the same thing at the planning board meeting I was at where we had the discussion, and the question came up about how many people were in support. It's not clear how many people are really involved in this and are not
Right.
involved in that.
Right.
And either way, it's just a question of everybody at Caldwell Farm needs to be notified of what's going on.
Yeah, so the question, I guess, before us is, in listening to what Claire has to say, is, I could get back to Jerry and simply say that be happy to meet with your board members, and as well as with any homeowner who would like to attend, and leave it up to the fact that you know that this is going to happen and that you can work with him to make sure that other homeowners who want to attend can attend it.
Right, I can send out a notice once I know the date.
Right.
But I would not plan
Right.
on Jerry telling anybody.
But
Well-
he is the representative for Caldwell Farm though, so do you understand where we're dealing?
I understand the problem that you have is that he, and it's clear in the bylaws that he can represent us at board meetings. But the problem is, he's trying to do things that clearly are bylaws. I mean, I have some of the papers here if you want to sort through them.
It seems to be a communication issue though. That just seems to be the issue.
It's more than a communication. It's
I think it's a little more than communicate. I mean, I think the issue, what we don't know, and what you've kind of laid out here, is we don't know whether a majority of the homeowners have to sign on to this, or 67% have to sign on to it, and whether the deeds have to be adjusted, and whether mortgages have to be adjusted. I don't know the answers to that, and because we haven't looked at that in detail.
do you
We
want to?
have, we have thoughts about it, but we don't know about it in detail.
I mean, I have everything on computer, but
These questions you can discuss with Jerry
Right.
at his meeting, so he doesn't need your paperwork
Okay.
right now unless
Right,
he wants
no,
it.
no.
So,
No, I'd rather not have it right now.
I think most of us get what Carlo is saying.
Yeah,
We're happy to get that information, but I am not entirely sure that we should be acting on it. I think the town may be very ill-advised to insert themselves into the governance of the Caldwell Farms development, whatever our
Good
thoughts
point.
might be.
I think it's as simple as when you have the conversation with him, make it clear that you needed feedback on how many people are actually in support in their names. So if you have that, then it's basically evidence.
and he may say, listen, we're just exploratory at this point in time, and we don't sure if we're gonna pursue it, I don't know what he's gonna say. He was very, as I would have been myself responding to the letter I sent. He was just saying, come and talk and let us see what's going on. I mean, it wasn't at all signaling anything. It was saying we could either push it or not push it, was the way I read it.
right. And my concern is he will not even tell people. When you go to a formal board meeting and you just ask, what are you doing? He-
Unfortunately, that's a separate issue though.
John's counsel here is quite good.
It's very good.
And that is that it is not our role to insert ourselves in the HOA's business.
That's
No,
fraught
but I
with all
think
kinds of
it's,
peril.
Though I would agree to that, I think it's important to know who is sitting the other side of the table.
I agree with that statement, yes.
Oh,
And
that's
that's why I
fine.
appreciate Carla being
And
here.
I appreciate that. And I think
Okay.
we'll find that out. And we'll,
Okay.
and,
The information is useful, though, that you provided
yeah,
today.
it's very helpful. It's
Okay.
very helpful.
So, just so I'm clear, you're definitely gonna have a meeting with Jerry and the board. Will anybody else be told of this, or are you just gonna schedule it with Jerry
I
and
will
let him do?
I will let you know.
Okay.
I'll be going back and forth with Jerry, I think.
Okay,
Unless you're watching, Jerry.
But this will not be a formal board meeting you're having.
No, it's not.
Martha's gonna be there, too.
Martha and myself, and the
Okay.
Vandellas. No,
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to chat about this? No.
Betsy's with me.
Betsy's with you. Okay, do we need to have a board action on this at all, or authorizing me to do this?
I think we do have to vote
I
on it.
I think we
Yes.
should.
Yes.
I think we should. Could I have a motion?
So moved. So move that John and Martha be deputized to meet with and have conversations with the Board of Directors of the Caldwell Farms.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Okay. Let me just clean up my stuff here. All right, Petocha, the zoning amendment, medical marijuana bylaw, and the review of the draft site plan reviews. On the medical marijuana, because I am a wimp, I postponed our trip to Portland yesterday because I thought it was going to snow.
Well, I think that might have been good judgment.
It did.
It did eventually.
It did eventually. And so we haven't made our trip. Linda was kind enough to, she had an interview set up with a city council member in Portland who had been either authored the legislation that most recently passed for recreational marijuana and also had set up a visit of a RMD facility. So I will work that out with her tomorrow about a new date. It will probably be in January. January. And we're looking forward to that. That is only a retail facility. One of the things that we need to have a better understanding of, though, is that what about the cultivation? And apparently they do not have cultivation facilities in Maine. They only have retail facilities. That's what I was
I don't know,
told.
but
So
we
we'll
do in
find out.
Massachusetts.
So we'll find out, and may not be able to visit one. But and only because I began to think that maybe a cultivation facility might be something that a entrepreneur might have more interest in Newbury than the retail. But so I think we have to be prepared for both. And then Martha,
Fraught with all kinds
Martha, George, and I.
opportunities for profit.
Yeah, Martha, George, and I met on this, and we believe that we need to have what's in the minutes, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
we need to have a work session in mid to late January, and then probably a public hearing in March on this issue where we talk about where in town the facility might go and what kind of restrictions will be placed on it based on what we see happening in our neighboring towns and throughout the Commonwealth. Anything?
No, I think we're getting a lot more information than we had. The facilities in Massachusetts can not only be retail, but can produce and process, all within that same building.
Right,
So that's a little different from Maine.
right.
But they can also cultivate alone and process in any other part of town that's allowed.
And one of the things that Martha just sent us was some information about distances that I guess was coming from the Planner's Web or, and I was interested to see that both from small towns really throughout the Commonwealth, Northampton, East Hampton, someplace on the Cape, I forget.
Dennis.
Dennis, all talking about that the state would require a minimum of 500 if we didn't have this is the issue of the distance from a sensitive receptor, schools, libraries, and the like. And a number of these towns basically said, well, we don't think that a medicinal marijuana facility is that much of a threat to schools. And so I don't think they've promulgated them yet, but they're talking about having anything between 50 feet to 300 feet as the distance, which I found interesting. And they believe, George, that it trumps the state, because the state says if you don't have a policy, you must do 500.
That's the default position. The
Do you
state
know
is
what I mean?
default, Right.
So that was just something we learned today, and I was surprised to see that so many of the towns had kind of opted for that. Martha, do you want to add anything to?
I don't think so.
Okay. Any board member have any comments about what we've been doing?
Did you pick up the fact that there had just been, I think, 2 reports in the last week maybe about the relationship between states which have medical marijuana laws and the increase or not in use of marijuana by high school,
No.
particularly high school age students. Well, it's out there on the web, I'm sure findable, but that's, classically, there are those who say there is an increase that's, I think, in the order of sort of a percentage or 2, and there are those people who say, well, it depends how you frame what you're looking at, and generally speaking, there is really actually not an increase. Certainly not one that's in any whole percentage numbers.
Yeah, I think that by the time we have our public hearing on this in March, we'll need to have researched as best we can those kinds of contradictory bits of information to have it available for the public. I mean, there are now, 14 states that
Something, and
that
Colorado,
correct?
importantly, is about to,
recreational.
yeah, well, they're also about to be medical too.
George, maybe you could answer this. In reading over the document you sent me this evening, it talked about that these are nonprofits.
Yes, they have to be.
Do you know if that's the case in other states?
I don't, no.
What is
I can
that?
check it.
What do you think that means?
It's not for profit business. I think part of it is to make certain that profit companies don't come in and take them over as a possibility. Subject to the laws of a nonprofit activity.
So as they're in business and they're making money, the money has to be plowed back into the business?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I was surprised to see that. I mean, we know what a nonprofit is, a 501c3, but I was surprised to see that applied to this. Okay. Anyway. Okay, review, any other comments? No? Review of draft site plan review revisions.
Were we not supposed to do homework and develop questions on this? Comments,
We
whatever?
went through this document in quite amount of detail last time. And what I'm not sure of, Martha, was the extent to which you were taking notes and making changes. Have you done that or not?
I have not made
Changes?
changes.
Because I went through my document and I found that we'd already made changes to a number of different things based on our meeting last time. And I wasn't sure how much was left to discuss. Martha, do you have a sense for that?
I think the biggest question, as I recall, was the review thresholds, the level 1, level 2, and who
Right.
the reviewing
Right.
body was, reviewing and approving
Right.
for the level 1. We did have some questions for,
I mean, I've got a number of comments here where we've changed things like from plan certification to plan verification and things like that. and the fine, raising the fine from $100 to $300, and, you know, so we have made changes to this dock, and I thought that, I know from my point of view, when we left it, the single thing that was still out there was the thresholds of whether or not we have 1 tier and 2 tiers.
Right.
Was that your
And whether that
understanding?
was permitted. yeah.
And whether, well, and, or appropriate.
Yeah, I
So-
think you raised the question as to whether we really had circumstances that would be clearly distinguishable. In other words, could we expect that we would get a quote-unquote level 1 that clearly identified itself, you know, by essentially conforming to our requirements here. I think the other thing that we did raise, that I don't know whether we ever answered, is whether it's possible to delegate responsibility.
Oh, to the town planner,
Yeah,
which I think we shouldn't say to Martha, because I think you're right, we should say to the town planner.
Right,
Does that
yeah.
make sense?
yeah, right. And so, you know, I think those two issues really seem to be the ones that we hadn't.
Yeah, I think that's it. George, do you remember other things on that?
Well, the only question I had was, I think Martha was gonna contact town council, Martha, about whether the 2-tier was appropriate or was being done anywhere else.
The question, I thought the question was whether there were any other communities that
The
had
town planner.
had the town planner.
It wasn't the tiers. I know tiers
Because,
exist.
yeah,
in
tiers
other-
do exist elsewhere.
This came from Brabowski. He had,
All right, that's fine.
yeah.
But as far as town planner, I don't know.
And I have not, I've put the question out there and I haven't gotten any answer.
I concur with David's concern about that, only because it's tough to administratively give that responsibility to a staff person. I mean,
I think you can give them the responsibility of, you know, preparing the thing all the way down to a decision. But ultimately, I don't think they should be the person who stands behind the actual decision. I think,
Well, the problem is what we're trying to do is we're supposed to be expediting the whole process. So if we feel that it needs to go through and trigger some type of review, if it's this can be a lengthy process if we have to go
Right.
through meetings and public hearings or whatnot and all those things.
I wouldn't suggest that. I would simply suggest that what you get is from the staff person, you get the review and the decision that they're recommending, and then the board simply formally adopts that with any amendments they may wish or not.
So you add another 2.5 weeks to it. I guess the question is how detailed do you want to get to these tiers, the first tier?
well, I continue, you weren't.
I've been
You were
absent.
You were taking your exams. I continue to have some questions, which David just brought up again, of whether the town needs to have this first level of between, well, it's now written 750 to 2,000, or 1999. Because I'd asked Martha and others at the last meeting, well, how many of these things, smaller projects like this, do you think we will get? And admittedly, it's conjecture, but if you think of the kind of projects that we have, I just found, I found that to be burdensome. And so I wasn't in favor of the tiers. I was in favor of maybe picking up some by decreasing the square footage from 2,500 to 2,000, which I think is part of your recommendation anyway. But that I'm still having I haven't been persuaded that the tier makes sense. And I'm not gonna, if others really do believe strongly in it, that's fine. I just haven't been persuaded.
Well, okay, the only thing I would say is part of the reason that it might come into function is because we are including two kinds of use, in particular, multifamily and mixed use, which we've never had before in our zoning categories in a very specific way. And they could be circumstances in which you are dealing with a fairly minor physical change to a property.
I appreciate that argument. But just having gone through the process with, not the Yellow School, well, both the Yellow School in terms of the presentations that we got for the Yellow School and also for the Woodbridge. Those were where you get multifamily, which is really 4 units or more. Is that 4 units or more?
3 or more.
3 or more.
3 or more, yeah.
It's highly unlikely that you will get something as low as 2,000 square feet for a 3-unit, either condominium or an apartment. The average size, especially in a market like this, is probably going to be in the 1,000 square feet per unit. And in fact, what Dolores is going up at the Woodbridge is probably 1,500 square feet per unit. Is that about right? And plus the top one is much higher.
Yeah, it's probably, the top one is about 2,600.
2,600.
And, yeah, each of the others would be as well.
So this is one of those difficult things to do, in my opinion, because you're trying to cover all possible scenarios. But to have 3 units of 2,000 square feet, I think would be unlikely.
Well, maybe it would be helpful if you were to take the most recent draft and make a recommendation, and we work off of that next time we review it, the board, as a whole.
And have Linda here as well, because she was part of
Yes.
your subcommittee. And you want me to do that?
Well, I'm just saying, you have the experience. It might be helpful. I know from me, and I don't know if anybody else has any comments. I'd love to hear them. But what we were doing was we were taking a bunch of examples from other
Right.
communities and trying to figure out,
Right.
what do we want. So we could use some
Okay,
experience.
thanks.
Yeah.
Martha, do you have any thoughts? Reluctantly, it looks like.
No, I do have thoughts, and I expressed some of this last time. The more I've thought about it, the more I've gotten to be a little concerned about creating the level 1 review for a number of reasons. But maybe, as John said, reducing the kind of the trigger threshold, square footage, would capture some of the things that we were trying to do with the level 1.
The level 1 was catching the smaller thresholds, but trying to expedite the whole process.
Right, and it was a
But-
quicker process because it doesn't require
Yeah.
a public hearing.
So if you're saying that we're going to increase the thresholds, then that makes sense to get rid of maybe the tier 1 process.
Or decrease the threshold.
Yeah, I mean,
From
Decrease.
2,500
Decrease.
Increase the overall.
the
Yeah,
overall
yeah,
threshold.
yeah.
So we pick up 2,000 square feet and more, and, but we don't go down to the first tier, and so it's so unlikely that we would get something of 500 to 1,000 square feet anyway. I mean, it's just,
well,
Yeah.
but it's not, it's at 750, and I think we. sort
even
of-
750, or even
Well, I think we sort of agreed that it needed to be up to 1,000.
Right.
When we
Right.
were talking last
So
time.
I'm just,
Yeah,
1,000 is this room.
We found it very difficult when we're going through our subcommittee is just looking at examples. It's so dependent on the site specific. The actual.
What about Playmakers? Would that have triggered level 1?
Well, it was for other reasons.
Yeah.
No,
that-
I know it triggered it because it was in the,
It was 2,000, that's 2,000 square feet total?
Yeah, I mean, that would have triggered a level 2.
because it
because
was
of the
dealing with
parking.
Parking,
3 to 5.
Whole bunch of
Right,
stuff.
impervious surface and all of that
Right.
stuff.
But if it had been a more modest, if they'd been taking over something that was existing and modifying only part of it, that's what I'm getting at. If you take over something which is existing and you either build an additional floor or poke something out the back, you could be changing it in a way that really changes the usage pattern, the abutters. I mean, that's the sort of thing.
That's what we went back and forth with,
Right, yeah,
looking at every possible scenario, and that's
Right.
how we came up with it.
yeah.
But just review the document, and we'll discuss it next time.
I would also appreciate, as I'm reviewing this, anything that you can all think of that could be a rationale for us doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Did we go all the way through this document at the last meeting?
I think,
I have notes, John, up until the last page.
Yeah,
so do I.
Martha,
Okay.
what document should I be reviewing right now?
The final draft that we prepared.
This one.
Okay,
And what I
Is it
can
this
do.
one?
all right, so I have a copy
I
of
don't,
that.
there's no date on, oh, 11/19.
11/19.
Okay.
And Kathleen, if you want, I could make you a copy of the one with my notes. They're not really that legible, but if you
If-
want to see what was kind of.
Okay, that would be
Okay,
helpful.
I'll scan it and send it to
Thank you.
I'd like to
We-
peek at what you
Okay,
think is gonna be, because some things I got notes on that I don't remember us discussing.
okay.
Maybe I was asleep.
we originally did get something from Brabowski, right?
Right.
Did anything that he sent, or initially he sent a couple of references, which weren't.
Well, he sent the city of Quincy, which we thought was not relevant,
which
but
was
apparently
The
some of the
model,
stuff was
he
pretty
also had
good.
a model which,
Yeah.
actually a lot of that got incorporated into this. It was more useful than it seemed at first glance.
Right. What I'm getting at, though, is John had mentioned that not only do levels exist, but also that Brabowski cited levels, yes? And this is what I'm trying to find, because I
Yes.
thought I'd had,
I believe so, yes.
So let's see what he has in his,
I'm wondering what.
But that's
what
from a
was
long
his-
time ago. You're talking about the email he sent way back when?
no, well, I don't know.
It's like
Martha-
months ago,
Oh, yeah, months ago,
months ago.
not recent.
Right, okay.
Right.
So we should take a look at that. And just email that to me if you could.
Yeah,
Martha.
I can resend that to you.
Because I don't remember,
His model divides applications, I've got it here,
Yeah.
into major and minor plans. Major
Yes.
plans are attended by a required public hearing, minor plans are not. As far as the level one review process is concerned, the first draft that we had actually had town staff making a recommendation, but the planning board at a regular meeting, making the final
yeah,
review. I don't know if you'd want me to send that out as well, just for that process.
Well, no, because
or I
it
don't wanna
is, I mean,
confuse things.
if, one of the things we don't want to do is make things more complex and more confusing and more time-consuming. Especially for a project that's relatively small. I mean, these are small projects.
All right, so that's homework?
Yeah, that's homework, okay? Any other comments on the site plan review process? No. Master plan update. Martha, David, and I met twice.
right.
We have gotten roughly halfway through a document that David gave to me, which is really terrific, which is the summary of the high priority recommendations from the 2006 master plan.
Yeah.
And we have gotten through three sections. And one of the most interesting things, especially for me, because I mean, David and Martha were intimately involved in the master plan's creation. But when we got to housing and went through the various goals, I think we were all kind of, well, I was surprised. I'm not sure if David and about how many of these things have been done. I mean,
Yeah.
there have been substantial amount of accomplishments, from allowing accessory apartments by right to allowing 2 and 4 unit structures by special permit, to emphasize village development in Byfield and Old Town sections. I mean, so a lot has been done. And so that's impressive. So what we have left, and I'm not sure what's gonna come out of this, David, are you? I mean, it's been very helpful for me just to go through it, to see, well, what's left.
Well, one of the things, yeah, that we talked about at some length the last time, which I found also very interesting, we were talking about affordable housing. And where that realistically falls or doesn't in terms of what's possible in Newbury. Because the kinds of vehicles that are possible to achieve that, one, are probably not ever gonna quite operate here.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this over time on the planning board anyway, and it never really sort of gotten anywhere. And it's a almost I think, unanswerable question.
I mean, in terms of affordability, and we chatted about this last time, and, so for example, if you do a for sale affordable project, hypothetically, yours, 12 units, you have 12 units?
12 units.
So if the town had required 10% to be affordable, one of those units would have been affordable. And in order for it to be you'd have to determine if it's low, middle, or whatever the income level is, but let's assume it's low. Well, then you're having some people buy in there who are paying maybe $60,000 for units, while the other units are, 10 times that. But then it's very difficult to keep the affordability restrictions on a for sale unit. The banks almost always require that they be extinguishable, that the affordability restrictions be extinguishable in the event of foreclosure. And so consequently, what does work is a for rent project, where you can have long-term 50-year affordability restrictions. And we just don't have a lot of them walking in our door in order to address this. So it makes it a bit frustrating. And so we might have to do a rethink of this. And we talked about housing rehab programs, and I think we were going to talk to Judy and your colleague in Salisbury to see if we
Right,
could tie
right.
in with them. Because there are a number of properties, I mean, right on High Road, that if we could somehow have the right approach to some of those individuals, that it'd be nice if we could assist some of these folks in rehabbing their properties,
So that would be ones to own and then deed them affordable? Is that how it works?
Now I've just moved away from, in my discussion, away from affordable to just having money available to assist homeowners who need it.
Oh, I see.
So, I mean, it was very useful.
What?
Those block grants still around?
Well, that's what we're talking about.
That's one of the
And
things we were
see,
talking
we
about.
don't qualify for block grants.
What's that?
I don't think we qualify.
We don't, high, income too high?
I think so.
Yeah, right.
And so, we need to tie in with something else. Now, the fact that Tracy has got a meeting with the CPA coming on mid-January that we'll all be at, I think.
The 15th, yeah.
Those funds, part of those funds, I think, are obliged to be used for
10%.
affordable housing. So if we get some of those funds, you could then apply them to a project. So that's an interesting possibility.
Also, the history of rental in this end of the valley, meaning the Merrimack Valley, is very different than it is in a place like, obviously, Lawrence, Haverhill,
Right.
North Andover,
Right.
Methuen. And a couple of projects here, and I don't know specifically now, but there was, back in the 90s, I suppose, there was a very infamous rental complex in Amesbury that ran into all kinds of problems with the law, with all kinds of stuff. And eventually, ironically, it went condo
A lot of those went condo, yeah.
and cleaned itself up, quote unquote, which was very
Oh, I-
difficult to sort of understand initially.
Is it the one behind the Friendlies?
That went,
Pretty well,
that
yeah.
went
That's
condo
condo,
too.
that's
Yeah,
condo.
That went
Yeah,
condo too.
Yeah, right. But originally, that was rental.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it-
sure, it's built as a rental. There's no way
Yeah.
that was built as a condominium.
Right, and it was hell on wheels. I mean, it had all the classic sort of.
It had a
formulas.
bad
Well,
reputation.
Half of Alston Brighton is now condominiums, and they were all, you know, not the nicest apartments for,
And
you
you
know,
know,
20
and
years ago.
it's funny because I sort of had, you know, visions of Maggie Thatcher and selling council houses to, you know, and it's funny because in some ways that worked, in the sense that it really changed the investment people had in their communities. In other places it didn't. It was a disaster, but.
And those are probably what we almost call affordable condominiums, is my guess.
Mm-hmm, yeah, right, oh, yeah, right.
It's just that you don't
A lot of
have-
people bought them and used them as rentals. I know people that did that. A lot of people bought them and
because
rented
they
them
were,
out.
they were a good deal.
Yes.
Well,
Yes,
there's
it is.
also a group of condos behind, well, where is it, sort of behind, is it behind? It's off Low Street, sort of.
By the
behind
hospital. By the hospital.
Yeah, there are like 8 buildings, maybe something like
Yeah.
that. And very interestingly, a very significant, and I don't know what the percentages were in the original condo contract, but a very important percentage of those are not owner occupied. They are rented.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, the nature of the building and the development itself and a whole bunch of things.
That was a different classification. I don't know how you say apartments though. That was at the time wasn't the same equivalency of the apartments behind Friendly's.
Oh, no, I know,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, at a time, you couldn't get in there unless you were going to be a buyer. But then all of a sudden, a decade ago, it started that you could go live there because you could be a renter.
Oh.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes,
And
yes,
that
yes.
subtle change was, nobody advertised it, but it sort of.
Well, the
got
best
to be
thing for
known.
affordable housing was the Great Recession.
Well, it's
Believe
true.
me.
Yeah, no, it's true. Except the banks have been rather slow to spot that.
Yeah.
haven't they?
Okay, Martha, on the master plan? Except we have to set up we'll just the
Another-
three of us
yeah.
come up with a meeting.
Oh,
and-
I do have something which is sort of maybe the master plan. Yeah, quickly. I went to, there's this group, I think I've mentioned it before, called Storm Surge.
Oh, right, did you go Monday?
Yes, very interesting. The guy from University of New Hampshire, who's a civil engineer, ran us through a very sort of thorough, he was a bit quicker than I wanted, but discussion of the way in which you look at coping with those environmental changes in terms of sort of a number of outcomes and the timeline and a whole bunch of stuff. Anyway, what came out of this, for me personally, was 2 things. One is that I found, okay, he had been involved in an assessment of the vulnerability of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to storm surge and also eventually to ocean rise. And the head of the planning department in Portsmouth was there, and guess who it is?
It's Rick, isn't it?
It's Rick Tainter,
Yeah.
who is somebody who this board has had quite a lot to do with over the years, particularly during the time of the village at Little River and a number of other things. Also there are a whole raft of people we also know, which is not, which I won't go into. But what emerged was that the person who honchoed the environmental impact study, if you want to call it that, is a resident of Newbury. Their environmental planner actually lives on Old Pine
Plum
Island.
Island.
Yes.
What's
Who's
his
that?
name?
Blight,
Yeah, I
something
think
like that.
I've met him.
Wait a minute.
Third house on, if you're going down
You know?
onto Pine Island, he's the third
Pine
house
Island.
on the left.
Pine Island. Pine Island.
Pine
Really
Island,
wanted
that's
to know
right,
that.
yeah. Anyway,
Oh, that's right.
I think that it might, and I don't know, because Rick had, the sort of reaction you would have had, I think, had somebody sort of talked about poaching one of their staff. But I think since he's a resident of Newbury, we might, as a board, ask him if he would be willing to come at least and talk a little to us.
I think that's fine.
About.
Yeah, I think that's very much.
I think it's a great idea. If
the
he's
kind
doing
of
that kind of
favor of
thing,
that.
I think we
Yeah.
should do that. So if you,
Yeah.
do you know who it is?
I don't know who it is.
Well,
Why don't you give the information and the invitation can go out to Martha, I think, or whatever. I
Right,
think that makes
yeah.
sense.
Okay.
So you were pretty, that was the first one I've missed. I had a Concom meeting Monday night. It got wiggled around, so I couldn't make it. It looked
Right.
like we weren't gonna have a quorum. But that was the one I wanted to go to more than any of the others, because it sounded like it was the most useful for
Practical.
what we have to
It
do.
did sound like it was practical.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a practical one. I mean, telling us that one more time that the earth is heating up is preaching to the choir. And that's terribly useless. But this guy sounded like, from what I could see beforehand, he was gonna have a lot of good stuff.
And so where is he from? UNH?
Yeah,
And UNH is what?
University of New Hampshire.
No, but what department?
Oh, engineering.
Civil
in his
engineering, he's
case.
a civil engineering
Yeah,
department.
the other people were from ocean study, I can't remember
Yeah.
what it is, but they have a very integrated group up there in terms of, their, clearly, I mean, he was working with people who have been looking at ecological
Is
stuff.
he willing to share his slideshow?
You can go online and see the slideshow, I believe.
Yes,
Okay.
it will be
All right.
online, it should
Yeah.
be online. I
Under,
would
just under the storm surge name?
Just look under
Yes,
storm surge and make
yes.
sure you got the Newburyport one.
Yeah,
There's been
because-
about, what, a half a dozen of
Yeah,
these?
something like
And
that.
they're,
I've missed them all.
I've looked at them online. They're
Yeah.
not terribly satisfying, but they're better than nothing.
Right. I would issue one sort of cavil about it, and that was that, okay, I don't wish to insult the gentleman, but his presentation manner didn't help in terms of if you just were gonna look at it, not there physically, partly because I think he felt that he had to get this all done in 40 minutes, and he really sort of didn't. And the other thing is that he made a number of assumptions which really didn't emerge until very late. However, I think the question session was pretty good at the end. But you certainly wouldn't have been able to come away with the toolkit. I mean, that's not what he was sort of bringing. He was really talking about how you deal with the fact that, among other things, you're dealing with people who say at one point there's going to be 1.2
Feet.
feet, and there are other people who are
6
saying
feet.
6 or more, or et cetera.
2 to 6 is
Yeah.
kind of a big range, but
Well,
that's what I'm
exactly,
hearing.
and that's what he was
That's what we're
talking
looking
about.
at by the
And
end
when
of the
I
century.
talked with Rick
You
Tainter.
can't do that and
Well,
be credible.
No, but what is interesting is that because of the way that Portsmouth developed, and this is why I thought about getting us into a discussion about this, because of the way Portsmouth developed, it turns out that some of the smaller, then lived in by poorer folks were built closer to the water, and
Sure.
so now,
Sure.
okay,
It's throughout the world.
but
Newburyport
also, but wait a minute. Those happen to be some of the very historic buildings in
Oh, sure.
Portsmouth,
Oh, I
right?
understand
So
that.
you've got this strange kind of anomaly where a century ago they would have been places you wouldn't have even been caught dead in. Now, of course, they're being renovated by,
Sure.
whatever, yuppies.
Well, I think it'd be worthwhile. I know that when, Dave Mountain and Martha and I sat down quite some time ago to talk about this, and it's very clear that there's no mention of sea level rise or storm surge in our master plan.
Right.
I mean, not one mention of it. And so if there's something that we really need to get into, so if this is a step that you think might be worthwhile, let's invite this guy in and we'll chat with him.
And the other thing which I found very disturbing, which Rick said publicly, so I can quote him, and that is that despite all the fuss that is currently going on about the FEMA maps are based on past
Yeah, we know.
numbers and have taken no account
Of future,
of future.
Sure.
yeah.
That's true of rainfall statistics.
Well,
too.
exactly.
Exact same problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, while we're on the subject, Martha and I have been talking about this, and she had suggested that probably the most, and I totally agree, the most appropriate group would be a multidisciplinary, multi-commission, multi-board group, sort of like the Stormwater Committee, where we have everybody that has an axe to grind represented, rather than, because this cuts across so many things. It's DPW, it's public safety, it's the building department, it's to a degree, it's Conservation Commission. And I frankly think that we should get a group put together, blessed by the selectmen and Tracy, and let this guy speak to that group, and not just us.
I have no problem with that at
I
all.
think this is something that goes
Well,
beyond the planning board.
yes, we don't know.
But we don't know how good he is yet.
Well, I'm going to say two things. I think it would be a good idea, and I probably can do this, and that is to see if I can't meet him on his own turf.
Do that.
Professional turf up in Portsmouth, because I go up there a fair amount. And that way, and also sound him out, and he may prefer, a smaller group, and it may emerge that what you're saying, John, is something that he would buy into. In other words, if he's going to spend some time, then he'd rather that it be
With the whole
right,
enchilada,
yeah, or
yeah.
he might not, and I think
Yeah.
that's his.
But I think you feeling him out initially is a good idea.
Okay.
So
Okay.
be sure that he's,
Right.
what page he's on.
Okay.
Yeah, I got one more thing on that same subject. A week or two back, I went to a seminar in the transportation building, and I just loved the security of federal buildings. I took away my jackknife that takes 30 seconds to open up, and didn't take this away. And I can kill Martha before she hits the floor.
Oh, isn't that
She
nice?
gets-
Oh, that's so
Nice,
nice.
nice.
Thanks,
I
John.
mean,
Nice.
I made that point to the
John,
guard, and
John,
he told me he could
it's
shoot
the
me
holiday
before.
season, please.
Anyway, I'm editorializing. Federal Department of Transportation, FEMA, who else? NOAA, all had something to say. And in spite of questions from the audience, there appears to be, to me, to be very little, what do we do about it out there.
Right.
There's a lot of studies. The big effort at the moment seems to be trying to pin down that 2 feet versus 6 feet, which depends on so many things that you can't wait for that. It's going to be something, and it's going to be bad. We know that. So let's start thinking about ways that we perhaps make it adjustable and so forth.
Yeah.
And the other thing I came away with is that there is no one place to look. Everybody has a little bit here, and so I think it's what it boils down to. If you want that information, you're looking at a number of hours online trying to cherry pick.
Well, I think you're right, and it's one of these things that is right now, unfortunately, in a lot of different locations. But everything I've seen says if you are doing something which is an engineering solution, that you plan for what you know and make it adjustable.
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it
And in
personally.
terms of land, and in terms of land use planning and building codes, plan for what you know and make it adjustable as
As
well.
adjustable as you can.
As you
Yeah.
can, and so everything from all the things that, this town has done and other towns are doing relative to structures and structure stability and sea scraping, those are all part of the game.
Yeah.
Okay, and nothing else on the master plan? So Caleb or do you think we can have a discussion of the demolition delay law quickly?
Move over here.
Because we really just want to meet with the Historic Commission, don't we, David? Do we want to go through the details of what we have here?
Well, only I would simply say that we might either decide to all review and then come back, but the result of Fred's weighing in and Sam's weighing in, I think, has been, from my perspective, very productive. in that they have zeroed in on a bunch of things that we talked about before, and they've also added a group of things which I think are important.
Well, we'll-
Sam has also got one thing wrong, but
Yeah, I thought he had a couple of things,
well,
wrong, but
the
that's.
zoning
it's not-
thing is,
Yeah.
this isn't zoning, and so you can't find people on the same basis that you can with zoning. It would have to be some other sort of structure, and I don't think,
I will.
I've never seen anything with a demolition delay bylaw that had fines that were related specifically to the bylaw. I couldn't find anything. It has to be something else.
So actually, that was more of a question for you. Do we want to meet with Caleb first, or do we want to do the demolition blade?
Let's get Caleb out of here.
Well,
Caleb out of here.
I think
Okay.
what about our audience here? Are you interested in the demolition delay bylaw discussion, or?
All right, so why don't we do that first?
Okay.
Do you mind, Caleb? No, this is just, that's
We're being
something else.
interviewed.
We're being interviewed. All right, so let's take on the bylaw, okay? And did folks read through it again? I know I have had a chance to look at both Sam's and,
So one of the
Fred's
questions I
comments.
had, Martha, was, are these comments going back to the historic committee, correct?
Well,
Not
we-
coming to us to like put together the document, correct?
No, it's going back to the Historic Commission.
Oh, commission, yep.
And I think the way we had left it last time was that the board felt that it would be good to kind of get everybody's comments together before going to meet with the Historical
So-
Commission, but it
so-
may not even be necessary. I did have some correspondence with Channing. They had their meeting last week, and they did discuss Fred's comments and Sam's comments, and have made some changes.
okay.
They wanted to make sure that we knew that it was based in large part on the state model.
That isn't necessarily good.
But,
Well, it's what they had. So we had
So-
also asked that we would go to a meeting of theirs.
right.
And have you found out when that might be?
Their next meeting would have been the night of the CPA, so they don't really have one scheduled for January right now. I think depending on the nature of any comments that come out of our discussion, it might be possible just to send them to
Yeah,
them.
then, do they want to bring this to town meeting?
They do want to bring it to town meeting,
So
I
then,
think.
if they don't meet in January, then we should then collectively get our comments together and have Martha send them a note or something like that.
They don't have to go through a public hearing.
No, it's
No.
not zoning, it's a general bylaw.
But they'd be well advised to have some.
That's what I
A
mean. I'm
workshop or
surprised they're
something
not
would
having.
be-
Yeah,
Yeah.
they certainly would.
Yeah.
So then let's go through our
Yes.
comments. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I haven't read it yet.
Haven't read it yet.
Haven't read it yet.
Do you all have a copy of this document?
Yeah.
I don't have a copy on me.
You don't, you don't have a copy on you?
My I only had an iPad, and I can't print out an iPad
then-
from.
Let's see.
You can't.
Martha, just so you know, when it doesn't matter, but when you send the documents, Word documents, if I can't read them unless I have a computer, which you would think I would have, but I couldn't read them. So it's okay.
Oh, here. Yes, I know. Sorry, we were having a iPad
All right,
conversation.
Could you read it on the iPad?
Should I read it?
Yeah. Can you call that up on the iPad?
Yeah, I would
can
think
read
so.
email.
I can't call it up on mine.
Oh.
Do you have a program like Open Office or something that will allow you to read Word documents?
I'll talk to you later about it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Talk to you later
okay.
about it.
Well, we'll see.
all right,
Great games.
all right, let's get on to this if we can.
Yeah, sure.
Let's get
Let's-
to the bylaw itself. I think
Right.
that the preamble that they have, I don't know that we need to comment on that. I don't know where,
Well, I would have a very strong recommendation that they do not commit to it.
I think they should just have the bylaw and,
Yes,
and that the
right.
preamble is something that I'm not sure would help them,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So let's go through, John, do you have this document?
Yeah.
Okay. Title of the bylaw, Preservation of Historic Significant Structures. Anything anybody has on this first page?
Yeah, I'm with Fred, 1799 doesn't cut it for
No.
me. He said Civil War, I wrote down 1850. I think that's the same, that's the general age that we should be looking at. 1799 does not make
Well,
sense to me.
before we get there,
Yeah.
okay, 1.6, okay, Sam is absolutely, have they taken care of all of his things?
I
do you know?
don't know. All I know is that they discussed them. I don't know what they.
Okay,
Sam.
because burning by arson, you can't have that as a standard.
That's too hard to prove.
Or portion thereof, that's far too hard to prove too. So they need to do something about that. Under the demolition permit, it's not
It's not
issuing a building permit.
Right, I had that circled as well.
It's exact reverse. It's
Right.
the permit,
It's
so
a
building
separate-
should be
separate
taken
permit
out.
entirely.
Right.
The permit,
Yes, right.
okay?
And
So
then
one,
we
that's
get-
on 1.7.
Right, so that's, okay, okay.
I've read it before, so I'm following you.
The preferably preserved, any,
No, I agree.
okay, that's a sort of weird definition.
I rebut it.
That's a problem, I think. They need to, it relates to what they do with that in the rest of the bylaw. So I just have it circled because I think it's problematic. Okay, then we get to the date, and I'm in absolute agreement with everybody. 1799 just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't fly.
And I think Fred's suggestion of 1861 is, yeah.
I didn't
probably-
understand that comment. Can you explain it to
Civil
me?
War.
Because what I thought it was is they were just taking one of the old buildings that they knew of and just wrote down a date. So why does it make a difference?
Oh, well, okay, two things. One is that the point that Fred makes in his review is it's very difficult to have easily accessible authenticating records for buildings
Oh,
to
'cause you
determine
can't prove the
dates
year.
prior
Right.
to 1799, okay?
Because the records are incomplete.
Right, I
Or
understand.
Right, or,
non-existent.
right, or challengeable or whatever.
So
Also,
they're based on hearsay.
yeah, right. And also sometimes what happens is they refer to a small portion of an existing house. And
It's
that's
been
sort
built
of a
around it?
problem.
Okay.
The other thing is, from Ann's point of view as an architectural historian, it's right in the middle of a major architectural period. So why would you have a cutoff date that is right in the middle of the federal period?
Right.
When the period
I
goes
see.
through to 1820, 25? I mean, to say 1830 would be a better point in time, anything before that.
Okay.
See, of course, I go further. I mean, I don't think we have many Victorian structures, but we have a couple of Victorian-looking farmhouses that look like they're 1880 to 1890. And, you know, I think that they might be worth preserving, but, you know, I'm not strong on that. I certainly can't be 1790. And it's got to be somewhere in the 1800s, but I would personally go as far as 1890, so whatever the will of the board is on this.
I'd
our
be
recommendation.
concerned about the more recent you make the cutoff date, the more people are going to be affected and be saying, oh my goodness, and maybe voting against it.
Well, also, I think you do have to, I think one of the things that doesn't get addressed here eventually is that they don't seem, with the exception of the business that in B, 1.9B and C, they don't actually get down to saying, we could provide you with a list. Okay, and the thing is that frankly, there are extant lists that we could use as a starting point, and I don't know why they don't refer to them.
Well, that's one of the comments I had. They don't refer to Macris at all.
No, I mean, and Macris, okay.
And what
which
did
is
we had like 140 structures on it?
something like that, and it's a bit wobbly, I mean.
Right, and they're-
and it actually talks about a number of things that aren't there anymore.
Right, and some of them it does acknowledge that they've been demolished.
Yes,
but,
right, but if you're gonna start somewhere, we do have two or three things which.
So we want to
provide
say here
baseline.
that we want to say, what date do we want to say in our, what we're going to say, 1860? Is that okay with everybody? 1870? What makes sense?
I think 1860 is better than 1870 because that's right again in the middle of another period.
Okay, so let's say 1860, and then that want to reference the Macris list,
Yeah.
okay?
Well, I think Macris plus, you know, the fact that you see, I don't think they ever at any point actually talk about saying that that the ones that are on the National Register and you know that they're all here. We have an area. We have an actual area with a whole set of listings. Now, some of those buildings are contributory, meaning they're not actually, you know, that old.
Do we know how many buildings are in that district?
I was looking at that
Yeah.
list today, and I can't remember. I was also looking at the dates of the buildings to see what
Yeah.
might make sense. And, you know, there are a number that are like 1850 or what, I mean, it kind of ranges.
Yeah.
But you
But
do have some,
It's about 40, I think. And it's nice because it has a whole range. I mean, it has
we got
church and.
Dutch colonial, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a bit of everything. It's got the schoolhouse in there.
So do you just say that it's the district itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
John, you into this conversation like I am?
Pardon me?
Typical engineer. I mean, really. Just a typical engineer. No kidding.
There's no such thing as a typical engineer, John.
No, that would be very boring, wouldn't it, if it was?
It certainly
right?
would.
Okay.
All right, let's
All
turn the
right.
page here.
Yeah, and D and E.
Have been questioned, obviously, by both.
Yeah, and I mean, that's like putting your head in the gas oven, in the sense that, you know, you've got to have something which is definitive.
What does Ann
Can
say
appeal
about this?
to-
Because this is criteria I've seen when people are considering structures for national, for listings, that in fact, the architect was of merit. What went on there had merit, and therefore you can get it listed on a national
Yeah,
register.
so what you do is you cite which authorities you will accept.
Okay, so in this situation, as by the Mass Historic Commission?
Yeah, well, it would seem to me any state or federal, and there are probably a couple of others
Yeah.
that I
In other
wouldn't
words,
know
according
of.
to the
Yeah.
Massachusetts Historic Commission, who believes that,
Right.
this particular building is merit because of this reason.
Right, and then since we exist in the, you know, the Essex, I always forget what it's called,
Yeah, the historic, whatever it is.
National Heritage.
the National Heritage District, they would have some input into this too, because they actually did a windshield survey,
There's been
didn't
some-
they?
Right, right.
Which sort of piggybacks on top of the Macris list, kind of,
Have to be
meaning they
careful
drove
about that
around
one,
and
though.
looked at stuff. But I mean, that's the way you do it, so that you don't have someone saying, well, Dick Cunningham always thought it was an important building.
What was the first list that you mentioned that started?
Macris?
Is that a town list or a
No,
nation?
that's
a state list.
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts Cultural
Cultural.
Resource Information System.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
okay.
And it's kind of fun. You can get onto it online. Just put Macris into your
How do you
browser
spell it?
and it'll come up.
M-A-C.
M-A-C-R-I-S.
Okay.
Yeah, just Google it and it'll immediately
Yeah.
come up.
And it's neat because it covers all the towns in the state. So you have to find Newbury and has a little system to do it. And every
Right.
now and then it has a hiccup and, and produces something really sort of gross and confusing. Like last time it produced Marblehead for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway,
All right.
yep. Yes, 110, we should change the word property to chattel.
I'm not sure I'm
I'm not sure
comfortable
I'm
with
comfortable
that.
with that.
Because of the common definition of
Yeah,
chattel.
I don't know that I go along with that.
Don't think so?
No.
I don't.
I would say
I don't.
personal
I-
property.
I'll defer to my
Stuff.
attorney to my left.
I'm just reading it now.
Oh, you are? I mean, property, he wants the word property in 110 to read chattel, and I just,
I would say personal property. 'cause
personal
chat-
property.
Well, okay, that, yes, but it can't just say property.
I got it.
Right,
that
because property
means-
could mean
Personal
real
property is
estate,
house.
but
Personal
yes.
property is
Okay,
right,
good.
okay?
Fred just likes. the chattel.
Fred's other things about inserting relocation is
Yes.
I
appropriate in all
agree-
of these
yes,
things.
I
Yes,
agree with that
absolutely.
completely.
Right, yep.
So just
Um,
make those changes.
Okay,
relocation.
and I think 2.4, I think it should be moved, as Fred suggests, to section 4.
He's
because
right.
It's
He's
a
right.
procedure,
He's right,
right?
he's right.
Yeah,
But I assume they've already gotten these,
They've gotten those comments.
so,
but I mean, I think that for us to sustain them
Reinforce
as
it.
well is good.
okay.
Okay, yes, I don't quite know what regulated structures and structures was about. They obviously dropped a word,
Well, there's a few things,
like
a few little mysteries in
that.
here,
Yes,
but
yeah, okay.
they're still a work in
Kinda
progress,
like on
what the
page
heck.
110.
Okay, so, then we get to 4, all right? And I think
Well,
premises are wrong, it should be lot or building. I agree with Fred, it shouldn't be premises.
Which is that? I didn't
Right.
think it should be lot or building.
Yeah, I didn't, I thought premises was appropriate,
I
actually.
thought premises is
Oh,
correct.
Okay,
Premises doesn't include the land?
It can
does.
include either
Premises
land,
includes the
land and the
land and or
building.
building.
So
Yeah.
basically, if
You
they want a
want-
building permit for anything on that
I think it is
property,
premises.
I think that's
Okay,
I
appropriate.
well,
see
all right.
what you're
Yeah, I
saying,
think it
yeah,
is.
you
What
could
it should-
destroy the
right,
value
then I
of
would
the
agree.
home
Yep.
Right.
by doing
Okay.
something
Which
stupid
number was that
elsewhere.
again?
That was 4.2 on page 7, well, my
No.
page 7.
Oh,
I, you know,
Yeah, it's 5 of 9.
yeah, right.
Fred's other comment on 4.6 is appropriate. Notice to abutters. I'm not sure about newspapers, but whatever you need to do.
Yeah,
Right.
it should be more than just posting it in here.
Yeah,
I mean, it
can't
should be
just
on the
post
website, it
Right.
should be everywhere.
Should be on the website,
In the
all of
paper.
those
Because
things.
everybody looks on our website.
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
very popular.
Yes.
Okay, the Sam comment, is important in 4.3. The building commissioner has by law 30 days, you can't suddenly say he's got 7.
Oh, wait a minute. That has nothing to do with it. This is just that he has to copy the application and send it to the Historic Commission. He doesn't have to make a decision.
Right.
So I
So
think,
just send a
that's a
copy.
misinterpretation of what they were asking him. See that, David?
Okay, yes, but why would why would why would he send it to them unless he'd made a determination that they should have it?
Right.
So you see, he
Why would he
has made a
contact them?
decision.
Why would he contact if he hasn't made a decision yet?
Well,
Unless I want to review it, give me more time to review it. Why else would it?
well, wait a
Well,
minute.
Does not Sam have only 30 days to act upon an
Act
application?
upon, it's not acting.
Well, I'm saying, I think that the building inspector in general by state law has to do something within 30 days.
Yes, but so what?
Itself.
So what he's saying is that to say that he's got to make the decision to send it to them in 7 days is at variance with the other standard in the state statute, and I think he's right.
Right, but sending it to does the statute consider the sending it to somebody else with a question is the same as acting on it? I would question
I
that.
see, I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either.
Doesn't say
I think
what.
that ought to be looked at with Sam and them.
Point
and
is,
Yeah.
yeah,
town
all right,
council.
we're not sure about this,
Okay,
and let's just
all right.
say, needs further,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it does appear that if
Typically,
an
30 days
application-
that is actual, real action.
what's that?
Oh, if an application is made, all the building commissioner shall do is forward a copy of it
Yeah, that's all he's doing.
to the historical commission. He's not making a determination on it. It's up to them to do that.
Right.
True. Okay, all right.
See?
Yep.
So why would he contact him?
Just because he's
Just to send a copy.
sending him a copy of what he's received.
He's pretty clear.
He's not made a decision. No one's made a decision. It's going into the process. I think that, I mean, that makes sense to me.
So they're sending one to Sam, and then Sam's gonna forward it to someone else?
No, the applicant goes into Sam. Sam then sends a copy of that application to the Historic Commission
Oh, I see.
Within 7 days,
within 7 days.
Oh, okay.
without
No,
comment.
and no one has made a decision,
Yeah, and without comment, probably.
surely without comment. Okay, we done with this page? 410 on the bottom, 411 on top?
There's some,
That
on the
was the
fourth
premise.
line, there's a bit of
Yeah,
confusing syntax.
Yeah,
That
and
That's a
if-
housekeeping issue.
yes, it is, and if for a parking lot,
Yeah, I
right
don't,
about that.
I don't understand that.
You
So why
don't
don't we
have
just
C
say
of Os
that
for
the
parking
whole
lots.
sentence structure of
Unlike-
411 needs to be revisited, all right?
Yeah,
Is that okay, Martha?
right. So, the next thing I would have is 6.2,
Mm-hmm.
which I think should go.
Just before we're doing, the building commissioner shall make every effort to inform the commission of his intention to allow demolition before she,
It should be the
Isn't it?
commission, not the chairperson.
no, right. But it's a he, she, and a his, her, right? Just to be sure,
Right,
his or her decision or intention. He asked why, okay.
but what I'm saying is it should be the commission, not
Yes.
a single
No,
person.
that's
Yeah.
Right,
correct,
Yeah,
No argument.
no argument.
right,
All
right,
right, next page,
okay.
7,
Relocate
all the
needs to be
relocates
added,
are
yeah.
correct.
Okay, 7.3, Sam has a query here about, maintenance and the whole business of replacement.
Well, he's right about that. It wasn't 7.3 though, was it? I thought,
I think it's.
you know, that you can't, yeah, there, if a structure subject to the, is demolished within, except for if people have asked for a permit to rehab the interior or something.
Or
Partial,
some other.
partial,
Or something else on the
Right.
parcel.
and so they can't deny that.
Right, yeah.
And so that's
there
in,
needs to
that's
be
in
something,
Sam's, so
yeah,
we just say we
right.
support Sam's on
Yeah.
that.
Well, just refusing to issue a permit for 3 years is not necessarily a deterrent. If somebody just tears down a building without asking, to punish them by not giving them a building permit for 3 years strikes me as not being terribly
Right.
effective. I would think
Versus a fine, you mean?
you do that, you would fine them because they're breaking the law.
Right, well, I think we need to find out whether there is a fine structure possible and what it would be.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I couldn't find anything
That's a very good point.
specific, but that's a good point, John. Okay. That it probably should be more than 3. Should be something like 5.
Well, if you wanted to create something else other than a new building, knock down the old building and you never want a building permit. You're never gonna ask for one, so holding it up for 3 years is not a punishment.
Oh, so for example, with,
I wasn't gonna bring that up.
Yeah, for example, one little
Yeah.
lane,
with,
Yeah.
one little lane is a perfect
Maybe then it
example of
should
that.
say building or occupancy permit, because then you could deny them occupancy of whatever it is if there wasn't a building.
I would think that John's got a point, though. What if you don't really care if you ever want to build something? You need to fine.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah,
want a
well, I
punishment,
would
you have
agree.
to fine them.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's a clear case. He didn't want a building there. He's delighted to have it gone.
right.
And he's not interested in doing anything with the
For
property
those-
other than mowing the grass.
For those people who just, you know, and that could be more and more of a situation.
That
But
could-
again, he didn't do
Yeah.
anything wrong, so let's make it clear to the that gentleman did not do anything wrong.
Well, they
It's their
had,
opinion.
No, he legally
they
did not
did-
do anything wrong.
they had a
You can't accuse
wonderful
him of
occurrence in Littleton of this, where the guy in fact backed
Oh, okay, where
a
is
piece of
it?
machinery into the building,
Oh,
right? and they came and said that the building had to be demolished because it was a danger.
Structural issues.
Except somebody was videoing
Okay,
what they were doing.
all right.
Wonderful.
By the way, George points out that in their preamble, they indicate $300 a day fine.
But we questioned whether we wanted to be in the business of collecting fines. So they left.
But the point is,
fines
they
out.
can't be cured, so it's not $300 a day. That would be until it was cured, and they're not curing anything.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, it has to be some other, it
There's
has,
gotta be something
So why don't we
there, and I
just make a
don't know what's
note,
legal
why don't
and
we
what
just
isn't.
make a note here
Follow
that,
up on
about, that, we think a fine
Why-
would be appropriate, might be appropriate in certain circumstances.
George, why would they not want to fine? I mean, even if you got the money, that could be used to preserve another historical building or something. So
don't
why
know.
why wouldn't they want to do that?
You know, on non-compliance issues or non-compliance consequences, they talked about Rowley and Lincoln having a 3-year period along with fines of $300 per day. But they went on to say, we questioned whether we wanted to be in the business of collecting fines and how exactly that would be enforced.
Well, that would be enforced through the building inspector.
That's what
Yeah,
I would
through the
say.
building inspector.
If you're gonna have teeth, you gotta have fines.
yeah, you've got to, I think.
Okay,
Okay, over the page to 8,
8,
3,
3,
well, and 4.
and 9, 1.
And 8.3, an absolute no, take it out.
I think that's correct.
Yeah, that doesn't
Delegation of
make sense.
authority.
That's scary.
Yeah, and I think number 4, 8.4 should not read may, I think it shall
Shall.
read
Shall.
shall.
Hell, yeah.
And forget about the proactive. Shall,
Right,
good, David. Shall develop a
Yeah.
list. All right.
and the other thing is,
E and develop.
when I was
Seems
doing
like it's
some
missing something.
research on this, I came across Canton's little chart. And it's a whole lot, you can take a quick look at it.
Okay.
It obviously references their bylaw in terms of the wording, but just simply, just looking at it, I mean, you know, it's pretty simple to follow, whereas unfortunately the one that they borrowed from somebody else, I don't know who it was, is.
It's a little
is
difficult to.
Total loser.
Yeah. So I think we as a board are finished our discussion here.
I have
Do
one
you
question,
folks-
though.
You folks would like to? You're good?
You sure?
You sure? All right. Okay.
What about the length?
You can
of-
email your comments too if you don't want to be on TV to Martha.
1865.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. What about the length of the delay period, the 6 months versus anything else?
Yeah, I'm kind of for a real old one for a 12 month.
I think it ought to be 12. I think the 6 months is much too short. The delay.
Oh,
New
delay?
reports is 12. I mean, am I right? Why 6?
Well, okay, because, well, two things, I think.
Six is fairly common, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, the reality is the state recommends 12, but most communities have adopted 6. And I think in this case, frankly.
get? That's what we can get?
Well, that may be it, but I honestly think that if, you know, the opinion from the experts is, and that is people who are in this sort of business, is you can't put together a rescue deal in 6 months unless you already have a whole bunch of things kind of lined up. And so, you know, if someone comes in and wants to demolish something,
I absolutely agree. That's why I think
yeah,
12 months is
yeah,
the right
I
amount
would
of
agree,
time.
because, I mean, look what happened.
I mean, if we had that, I mean, it takes a long time because you're changing someone's attitude. They want to tear it down. You don't want to tear it down.
Also, you may be looking for funding,
And
all
you're
kinds of
trying to
stuff.
make it financially feasible
Yeah.
for someone to do something that you want done, and at least on the face of it, they don't want to have done.
Well, look what happened with the one, you know, down the street that got torn down. And that John had, you know, his good offices involved in that over a period of what? would you say, with the one down the street here? 3 months?
Probably around 3 months total from go to woe, yeah.
Right, and,
Yeah. And several people looked at it and scratched their heads and tried to see if a deal could be put together and failed.
right, but my point being, if anything had come over the horizon, it certainly would have taken more time than that 3 months.
Absolutely, oh, yeah.
Right?
At the
Put the deal
time of the
together.
year, for example, that would have to be moved during the
You
off-season.
don't want to stay.
It has to, you had, gotta go over frozen ground.
Yeah.
That doesn't have crops on it that are gonna
Right.
get destroyed.
Okay.
Did you
All
wanna
right,
look at
we
that?
are done with this, and Caleb, are you still willing to do this?
Yes.
Oh, man,
Waiting so patiently.
yes,
This
he
is
says.
for.
Just basically what I'm doing is
Homework.
I'm getting all the different boards and committees to like just say who they like, not who they are, but what exactly what is the planning board? What's the purpose in the town? Just stuff like that.
Were you the one that taped Cunningham when I saw you go in Devil's Den on TV?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
so-
yes,
Does the
where,
board trust him?
oh, I
I
don't
don't know.
know. I have a handout that I can send you at some point, that you can use as a crib sheet.
Okay.
For your notes, for your discussion, you giving a presentation?
No, for his, you know, I have somewhere, have a handout about what the planning board does.
Oh,
and to
okay.
give to people who didn't
Right.
understand.
I think we have that on our website, the FAQ
Yeah,
sheet.
I think,
Aren't you just taking this and then going to air it, or what are you going to do with
I'm
this?
just gonna basically I got some shots of you guys doing like your meeting, whatever. So then have one of you guys just explain what the planning board is, what the purpose is in the town, you know, because I mean I still don't really know, but you know I mean like nobody at home. A lot of people know that there's boards and committees in the town, but
They don't know
what
the purpose.
exactly do they do? You know what I mean? Oh, they just give me a hard time and I want to do something. You know, there's more to things like that. You know, so
right.
doing all the committees and like, you know, I did Jim Cunningham because he's just easy to talk to and what a constable is. You know, and then he gave some history behind it, and then I did Tracy and
No, see, I turned it on and you were driving in the truck.
yep,
And you were driving and you were going around town, different places, and I was watching it.
yep. No, so I'm trying to get more history on the town. I'm supposed to hopefully get an interview with Henry Poore. He's like 105. He has the Boston cane,
Oh,
which is like, you know, some like the oldest person in the town has it or whatever.
What
Boston
can
what?
I'm not.
It's called the Boston cane. It's like it's something that's been around forever. Like the top of the cane is pure gold, and it's something that's been around for like ever. I guess like every town had one. The oldest person in town had it.
Oh, really?
He's
It gets
the one
handed down.
Yeah, it gets handed down to the oldest person.
Oh, I see.
So I'm trying to kind of get the
Wow.
history of the town, like from going from the oldest down. And I'm trying to get all the committees and boards and stuff. So
Very interesting.
kind of trying to get the history of the town, the oral history before it's gone, and then plus telling everybody what in the world is going on in town hall stuff. So
Too bad you missed Jim Cunningham's father.
I know that's I heard
Jim
it's
was a
interesting.
terrific resource.
Yeah.
Dick was, rather.
Yeah, so I picked Jim's brain a lot now too.
Oh, Jim was
Yeah.
paying attention.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I heard
definitely.
he said his dad. He said his dad forgot more than Jim even knows.
Oh, yeah.
oh, we did, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, what I want to do is just whoever wants to talk, explain, or you guys want to.
At 9 o'clock, it's not me.
And then basically all I want to do is explain what the planning board is and what the purpose is in town. If you don't answer what I want, I'll just keep asking until you do. So,
Plus, we are still on air.
yeah.
Yes.
All right. Go.
Who wants to do it?
This is the chair.
Okay, so
All right.
let me get this
Want to introduce yourselves
Th-
again?
There's a lot of different functions. It's more than what do we do, it's what are all of the things we
Go,
do.
John,
We have a
it's
number
your
of responsibilities
Cheat sheet.
that are quite disparate.
Okay, so who wants to start?
Well, I was going to not look at this, but I will. A lot of things that happen in town can happen as of right. And if you want to build something on a piece of property that you own and you're in conformance with certain things, you just go to the building department and you get a building permit. But oftentimes, properties may not be in conformance, and there are some either exceptions or changes that need to be made, or that you have a large piece of land and you want to subdivide it and put a small development on it. And the two things that the planning board oversees more than anything else are subdivision regulations, which is how land is subdivided for really both commercial and residential, but in this town, it's mostly residential, and zoning. And, for example, this past year, under Eileen's guidance, we revised a significant amount of the zoning code for the town of Newbury to make it more easily understandable for developers and for the neighborhood people to do that. And John O'Connell, at the end, just significantly rewrote our subdivision regulations, again, to make them more understandable to developers and to the community. And also something which is important for this town, which is stormwater regulations, because of all of our wetlands and all of our salt marsh areas. And so those have been rewritten as well. And so we have done those kinds of things. Those are the day-to-day kind of pragmatic things. On a broader scale, the planning board was responsible for creating the master plan, which was adopted by the town in 2006. And in fact, some of us are right now in the process of reviewing that to see to what extent that needs to be updated or changed. Some of the things that we've talked about that we think automatically need to be looked at, for example, are the issue of sea level rise, which wasn't at all contemplated in 2004 when the research for that was being done. But now is, we think, an important issue. And plus, there's many other things that we're probably going to get involved with. But as you heard in what we talked about on our agenda tonight, we're looking at medical marijuana and where a facility might be permitted to be located. Not that it would be located, because we haven't had any demand for one yet, but we're obligated to come up with a plan and a recommendation to the town about where we think such a facility could be located. One of the more other interesting things that we did in our past session was, and again, it was written by board members and Martha, was the whole issue of solar photovoltaic arrays, which came because of the proposal out on Scotland Road. And so we're involved in things that are both contemporary and interesting issues and longer range kinds of planning.
So, is the board elected, or is it, how is it formed? And the other thing is how does it coincide with like the selectmen and the other boards in the town?
She's the top vote getter right here. No, I don't know if she is or not, but it's an elected board.
5 years,
5 years, right?
5-year terms. And every year, one member is up.
Okay.
And then on top of that, we have an alternate. Is it an alternate?
Associate member.
Associate member.
Associate member.
Associate member, which is George right now.
I'm appointed by the select.
But he's appointed by the selectmen upon the planning board's recommendation.
Okay, so how do you guys work with, because I know with the solar on Scotland Road, I know that you guys approved stuff and then it went to the, like, you guys kind of did, if I remember correctly, you guys, like, you know,
That didn't come to us.
did it come to you guys?
Didn't come to us,
Those.
but we, because
something, right?
there were no regulations.
Okay.
What we did is we wrote the regulations and then took them to town meeting, and they were approved at town meeting in the spring.
Okay.
Before, for the application, though, you probably did see the members of the board at the meeting for the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
And that's what you're thinking of, I'm
Okay,
sure.
okay, cool.
Yes.
So, what else? So you guys like what would people come here for say, they violate, like, say something like wetlands? Is this like?
No,
we
no.
That
don't
would be
do
the
that. That's the Conservation Commission.
Conservation
So
Commission.
what other
The-
type of issues? So it's like if someone wants to build something or somebody
No,
wants
so the most common thing is if someone has a piece of property and they want to subdivide it. They might want to make it into one lot, or they might want to make a subdivision.
Yep.
That's the most common.
Okay, so you guys are almost there to make sure that they do everything legally and
Yeah.
in the right order and everything. Right?
Well,
In
there's
many
two
cases,
processes.
The town takes over the roads after the road and the subdivision is built. So part of our job is speccing the kind of road they must build and seeing to it that that's exactly what they do. So one of our functions is seeing that the infrastructure of the town, as the town grows, is appropriate.
And that's defined by our subdivision regulations.
Right.
So we have, like, you have, someone takes a piece of property and they want to divide it as approval not required, an A&R. That's basically, we're just making sure they meet their criteria defined by the state. But if they want to make a road and subdivide into a subdivision, then they follow our bylaws in town. And then that's where it comes to us, and we're going through the review.
Right, and just as an addendum to that, all of this process has to follow Mass General Law. The subdivision rules and regs are based on that as well, and the approval not required process.
So what's your role in the town? Because I know you're in the town hall every day. But you work hand in hand with the planning board. So how is your position, like, how does that work in the town?
Well, I'm the town planner, and so my primary responsibility is really working with the planning board. I'm the point person. If somebody wants to come in and, say, submit an application for division of land, whether it's an approval not required or a subdivision, the board is also responsible for site plan review approval and for certain special permits. So for any of those applications, I'm the point person, and I'll review the application, make sure it's complete, sort of guide the applicant through the process, up to the point of getting it to the board. I'll review, make comments, coordinate with our engineer, and that kind of stuff. I also get involved in, John was mentioning drafting zoning. I'll do research on that or
Explain to him how that comes about.
what, zoning?
So, yeah,
Zoning
that's how we
changes?
spend another majority of our times on zoning. So explain the zoning changes in this. Just, they don't know.
Well, we have a zoning bylaw in town, which covers all kinds of things. I'm kind of
Right.
blanking out on that. But if there's going to be a change to the zoning bylaw, that change can either be initiated by the planning board or it could be initiated outside, but it would still need to come to the planning board to go through a public hearing process. It's another process that's outlined very strictly under Mass General Law. To get it to town meeting, there has to be a public hearing. It has to follow a very strict timetable. Then it has to be submitted to the Attorney General for approval. As an example, we're working on revising the site plan review bylaw right now. As John mentioned, we're doing medical marijuana. We've done the solar bylaw, wind turbines. So some of them are new bylaws responding to issues that we see are coming to town. Some are revisions of existing bylaws, such as accessory apartments, where we feel that there's improvements that can be made.
An important point is though, the town votes on 'em to approve them.
At town
The
meeting.
planning board doesn't just say we're gonna have this bylaw and it goes in effect. It actually has to be voted on and approved by the town.
Yeah, because with solar, you guys didn't have something to work off of, or something. The town didn't have anything to work.
No
off.
bylaw.
No
So
bylaw.
you guys created that and then brought it to town meeting and had it voted on, correct?
Right.
Okay. So what goes into making a bylaw or something like that? Is it you kind of go off what other towns
Right.
do? Or
Research.
David.
Research.
David, explain
since
that.
David
Yeah.
did a lot of that.
Right. Basically, one of the things we've done is to, over the last 5 to 6 years, I've been on the planning board, I think 7 now, is to look at a lot of the existing bylaws that we had in relation to when they were actually put together. And in many cases, they not only had gotten somewhat out of date, the town had changed. Also, we had had experience in terms of how well they worked or they didn't work. And we passed a rather innovative bylaw back in 2001 or 2
Yeah.
called the Open Space Residential Development Bylaw, which basically set up a situation where you could conserve 50% or more of a property, and therefore you could essentially build much more densely because you didn't have to have 1 acre building lots, etc. That bylaw had been written, and we had at least one fairly major development in town. But it turned out that the bylaw was very difficult to understand because, for example, it would refer to things that were not yet appearing in the bylaw. In section 1, you get a reference to section 10, let's say. And so one of the things that I did was to sit down and essentially not rewrite it, but revise it, and we hope put it into a format so that it's a bit more understandable, and also so that if we do make changes in the procedures, we don't have to go to town meeting every time we want to change a single paragraph. We can do the changing of rules and regulations by having a public hearing at this level, meaning a board. Whereas a major bylaw, like the one we're considering, like just now, the medical marijuana bylaw proposed, is one that we will have to do a fair amount of research on. And part of that comes looking at what neighboring communities are doing. Part of that also comes from what we know the state will require, because there will be some things that the state, particularly I think in this case the Board of Health, State Board of Health,
Right.
will have some say in what we
Probably
do.
public health.
So, what we I think as a board do is we both reflect the state in which we live and also the town in which we live. And I hope we respond to changes in the community, which have happened over time, which again probably connects to the other thing we talked about tonight, which was the demolition delay, which is the whole idea that we have some very historic houses and other kinds of structures in the community which we would not want to see pulled down overnight without someone at least saying they were going to do it, and asking the community essentially whether they want that to happen.
Cool. All right.
John has one more thing. Why don't you tell him?
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. One other part of our function is to obviously work with other boards. John, for example, our chair, is the liaison between the planning board and the Board of Selectmen. Linda McCamick, who is not here tonight, is a liaison with the Zoning Board of Appeals, and you'll be talking with them eventually, I'm sure. And she tries to keep us up to date with what they're up to and what their issues are. I'm the liaison with the Conservation Commission. I'm on the Concon.
And David
And
does.
David does.
Oh, David, yeah, David
Merrimack
is
Valley
the Merrimack
Planning
Valley
Commission.
Planning
Yeah.
Commission.
I'm the person who represents this town and this board on the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, which is, well, I can never remember whether it's 17 or 18 communities which stretch from Newburyport and Newbury all the way to Lawrence and Andover. And they have an office in Haverhill, and we meet once a month, about 8 times a year, and basically concern ourselves with transportation, economic development, those kinds of issues. And also, since we, Newbury, are a small community, and we're very lucky actually to have insisted in the past on affording a professional planner. Many small communities don't have a full-time planner, we do. But in addition, we often have to do things for which our resources are really not adequate in terms of, let's say, either equipment or expertise, and we can get that kind of help from the Regional Planning Commission, which is both a regional agency and also a state agency as well.
Now, we pay dues to them, do we not, Dave, as a
Yes,
town?
but it's
And that
very-
finances the free consulting we get.
Right.
And the free
I mean,
miscellaneous
we
services.
actually
Minimal.
pay a
Minimum, right? It's like
About
$5,000.
$2,200.
yeah, I mean, it's cents per head. If there are 6,600 of us, and it's I mean, $2,200, you can do the math, and I think it works out.
That's about
to
30
be-
cents a head.
Yeah, 30 cents, I mean, you know, and frankly, the return on the dollar is very good in our experience. We, for example, had major help with data and writing of the master plan that we did several years ago, because the environmental section requires the kind of expertise that we don't have as a, you know, as a community, frankly.
They also they prepare assessors maps.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we have access to a information database called MyMap, which has our maps on it, as well as links to our assessors' data and things like that, which are invaluable planning tools.
Cool. So is there anything else you guys want to say?
We're done. Merry Christmas.
Good night.
Beer.
No, that was perfect. That was informative. That was
Good.
great.
Good, thanks, Caleb.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, too.
You got more than you need.
Do you get paid to do this? You just do it for fun?
No, I get paid to do it.
Oh,
You
that's
do?
nice to hear.
Very
I do
good.
it, but I do really enjoy it. Though. I think it's a blast, especially the history stuff. I love the history stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's the best, it
This
really
town is
is.
so interesting.
I've never heard that about the cane, though. You taught me something tonight.
Never heard of it
I
either.
heard that from Joe Story and
It's called a Boston
Boston cane.
cane.
Oh, right, you're right.
And how
yeah.
do they figure out? So they must figure out the second oldest person, and it goes to that person?
Yeah, something like that. Because it's something that isn't. The original one is solid gold, but it's a replica. The guy has like the head, like whatever
Yeah.
it is. So
What happened to the original one?
I don't know.
You don't know?
They might have it. I'm not sure. They said that it's a replica. They say it's not the original. So I don't know if they have it.
Isn't that interesting?
You must have taken it
But I
from
guess
that.
every town in the area.
Oh,
had it.
you did. You
So, I don't know, but that's gonna be sweet. 105, that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, maybe it's not so cool.
Have you attacked the group at Dunkin' Donuts that meets every day at 10?
With the highway department?
No, I'm thinking of Brownie Taylor, who is not always there because he's not.
Actually,
Old Brownie.
I got that name.
Yeah, old Brownie. Brownie has been in town forever. He's early 80s. Pete Morris grew up here, and he was the president for years of the 5-cent Savings Bank.
Okay.
And
it's
Bill
PDF, I
Page
think.
Pete Morse, yeah,
was
No,
Page
what about-
Insurance. And Bill
John.
Bill has lived in town forever.
That's.
What's his name?
Bill
Graham.
Page, Arthur S.
Oh,
Page, AKA Bill.
Oh, okay. Alright, cool.
But they,
Oh, what's that?
you just show up someday, I think it
on
wouldn't be
their
hard to
website.
get them talking about the good old days.
Yeah, see, that's
Old guys like
That's
that.
pretty cool.
We tend to kind of forget just how bad some of those good old days
That's what
were.
we don't
And
have in
sometimes I go to I've gone to the men's breakfast.
It's in the,
first
Yeah.
it's in the planning.
Yeah, that's a good place to get
Planning department?
get some help.
Cool. Thank you guys. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
Thank you very
Merry
much.
Christmas.
Right.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas back there.
Read the text, and this is my writing.
I think we could,
Oh, what's that one?
Can we adjourn?
move
We have,
to
wait a minute.
close.
Any liaison, anybody wants to say anything on liaison reports?
Oh,
No, we didn't.
No, we've already covered the only big thing.
Well,
Okay.
selectmen, we did give the presentation on the public safety complex to the selectmen last week.
Could you send me a copy of your presentation?
Yes, and
Why don't we
I've been
just
meaning
leave
to
it
do
there?
that,
Maybe
yep.
you're interested in it?
Yeah,
Yeah, why don't you send it, or I'll forward it to you.
Right.
Water comes in.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, you wanna do
Yes,
the
so
Oh,
moved.
I'm not sure what,
minutes?
No,
Oh, the minutes.
minutes.
Okay.
I want to approve the minutes from December 4th. Do I have a
Oh,
motion?
right, so moved.
All those in favor?
Wait,
Aye.
do we have a second?
Yes. Oh.
Yeah, I'll second
Yes,
it.
John second. Okay?
aye.
That passed.
You're welcome.
Right,
Well, that's really interesting. They'd have that on the, planning
Right.
department's website.
and the other fascinating
Still on
thing,
the
which
air?
will mean something more
adjourned.
to,
We're adjourned.
You shutting us off, Steve?
Are you awake,
Are
Steve?
you sleeping?
I